I collect trading cards as a hobby. I had a small collection when I was a kid. Nothing special. Just cards I liked, kept in a box under my bed. They followed me through a couple of moves, through spring cleaning. I have them sleeved now. Card savers in a binder. A few years ago, I picked up the hobby back. At first, it was just a pack here and there. That didn't really last. And you know what comes next. I collect modern cards like everyone else. They're great if you get your hands on them. But vintage cards had always a special place in me. They're what I grew up with. It's a shame how they are so hard to come by now, and how expensive they've gotten. That's why I answered Derek when he messaged me. We went to high school together. He was involved in some shady dealings back then. If people wanted to get something, he was their guy. We hadn't talked in years. His message just said, "You still collecting?" Then he sent a photo. Cards spread out on a folding table. Loose packs, booster boxes, all still wrapped in plastic. I stared at it longer than I meant to. I even asked him where he got him. He said he'd been finding stocks in abandoned places. Old buildings no one checked anymore. Mostly, I guess, malls? He called it a mall raid. He said he'd been doing it for a while. Long enough to know what stores to check. Long enough to know when the place was picked clean. This was different, he said. Bigger. The only problem was he didn't have a car anymore. He didn't give any details. Just said he had to sell it off to pay off some sort of debt. So he needed a ride. Would split whatever he found half and half. I said yes, I mean, who wouldn't, right? We drove most of the day. Crossed into another state sometime afternoon. The further we went, the quieter road got. Fewer exits, gas stations that looked like they were stuck in time. Derek talked most of the way. About past raids, about abandoned malls, and stores shut down because of some legal stuff. He sounded confident and sure. Like this was his job. In a way, kinda is. We stayed the night at a motel near the edge of the city. The room smelled clean, fresh sheets, and the people were nice. Sleep came and went. The mall sat further than I expected. No other businesses nearby, no buses, just a wide parking lot in a building sitting by itself. This is it, I told myself. My first mall raid. Kind of funny to say that out loud. There were no lights and no cars. Weeds pushing through cracks in the pavement. One of the side doors had already been forced open. Inside, the mall was so quiet. It's something that you didn't want to disturb. I lowered my voice without realizing it. Sunlight came through dirty skylights. Dust hung in the air. Most of the stores were still there. Signs, displays, mannequins standing where someone has left them. The car shop was exactly where Derek said it would be. The metal gate was halfway down, just enough space to crawl under. Inside were glasses, shelves, boxes stacked behind the counter. I scanned the place. One trip wouldn't be enough. I didn't take anything yet. I just stood there for a second and I was just taking it all in. I grabbed a loose pack and tore it open right there. Steady, careful. It's a bust, a dud pack. But that didn't slow me down. I ripped another one. This time I stopped. Just stared at it. Then I laughed. Too loud, I guess. I hadn't pulled something like that in years. I tried to reach for a sleeve. I realized I didn't have one. Of course I didn't. I stood there holding it between my fingers, not sure what to do. Then I remembered where I was. I reached behind the counter and pulled the sleeve from an open box. Slid the card in. My hands were shaking that I had to do it a second time. I looked up, ready to say something to Derek. That's when I realized he wasn't there. I stepped out into the hallway without thinking. Derek? Nothing. I walked faster, past the shoe store, then another, then the same one again. I stopped and turned around. The card shop wasn't there, just a closed storefront. I swore and pulled out my phone. No signal. I shoved it back into my pocket and kept moving. Took the first turn I saw, then the next one. I didn't slow down, didn't check signs. I almost ran into Derek coming out of a side hallway. We both flinched. There you are, he said. I told him not to wander off like that. He looked dazed, like he was surprised to see me. I thought you were right behind me, he said. I didn't argue. We walked. I stayed half a step behind him. The mall didn't line up anymore. Escalators led to floors that didn't match. Corners showed up too fast. Derek stopped talking. When he answered, it was off. Like he was waiting for something to catch up. We ended up in the food court. Tables overturned. Plastic trays scattered across the floor. There was a fountain in the middle. Dark and muddy water. I couldn't tell how deep it was. I couldn't see the bottom. Derek walked straight toward it. He didn't slow down. He slipped his bag off his shoulder and threw it in. I stared at him. What the hell are you doing? I said. He just looked at me. He didn't even look surprised. I don't need it anymore, he said. I was at a loss. So I just grabbed his arm. We're leaving, I said. He flinched. Like he forgotten I was there. And then he just nodded. We ran. I rushed down the stairs and landed wrong. Pain shot up my ankle. I grabbed the rail and kept going. The hallway opened up. Same stores. We ran it again. Same stairs. The pain was slowing me down. Same hallway. Again. I leaned into the rail and went down, step by careful step. I didn't look at Derek. I didn't want to see how he was doing. We were on the same floor again. I stood there to catch my breath. waiting for my leg to stop shaking. I was looking around and I saw it. The exit. Glass doors at the end of the hall. I ran. No looking back. I hit the doors and went through. Glass doors. Bright light behind them. We hit the door so hard, we stumbled into the parking lot. The air felt normal. Finally. Derek came out a second later. He was smiling while shaking his head. I think I'm done with this, he said. I didn't answer. I drove. Didn't ask where he wanted to go. He talked a little on the way back. Mostly things were already said earlier. Stuff from high school. Jokes that were still funny the second time. It gave me time to breathe and cool down. I dropped him off near a gas station on the edge of town. He thanked me. Stood there watching the car until it turned the corner. When I got home, the cards were still in my bag. All of them. I even checked twice. I set the bag on the table and prepared to finally inspect my haul. Before I could open the bag, the doorbell rang. I opened the door. I was back in the mall. Same halls, same stores. Derek stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, looking down the hallway like he was waiting. He looked up when he saw me. "Oh, good," he said. "There you are." I noticed it while brushing my teeth. I feel a slight movement in one of them, like it's starting to get loose. I keep brushing, but the brush keeps catching on a tooth that isn't lined up with the rest. I stop and check with my tongue. It moves when I press on it. I stood there for a second, staring at myself in the mirror. It doesn't hurt, it just doesn't feel right. I try brushing around it, slower, but it keeps getting in the way. I tell myself it's just probably nothing. I grab it between my fingers. I didn't pull right away. When I finally did, it comes out easier than I expected. There's this dull pain and then nothing. I hold the tooth in my hand and look back at the mirror. My mouth looks normal. All my teeth are still there. I check the spot with my finger. There's a gap. My finger goes back further than it should. My morning went on, but my tongue keeps going back to that space. And every time it feels deeper. I went to the dentist that afternoon. I told him about the tooth came out while I was brushing. He looks into my mouth, checked my teeth and run some tests. He tells me I haven't lost a tooth, that everything looks fine. That night, I lose another one while eating. I felt some movement in my mouth, I stop chewing and lean over to my sink. Something fell out. I looked at it and it's another tooth. After that, it keeps happening. While brushing, while eating, sometimes while just talking. I'll be in the middle of a sentence and I feel something come loose. I stop talking and just get my mouth shut. I stop calling people, answer emails instead at work. No one notices. Every dental appointment starts and ends the same way. That I still have all my teeth and that I'm fine. At one point, chewing became so hard that I just didn't eat at all. My mouth doesn't feel right anymore. There's too much room. My tongue doesn't know where to rest. Breathing through my mouth feels wrong. That's when I start hearing it. A low sound deep within my mouth. I, I don't know what it was. It's like bone rubbing against bone. One night, I was brushing slowly. I hear a crunch. I freeze. The sound comes again. Heavier. I lean closer to the mirror and open my mouth wider. The light reaches the back of my mouth and stops. There's something there. A dark shape pressed where my teeth used to be. I see eyes open. It's staring right at me. My jaw pulls open before I can stop it. There's a loud crack inside my mouth. Bone gives way. Something presses forward against my lips. Hard. Forcing space that shouldn't be there. I hear bone crunching. Slow. Forceful. Something was pushing out of my mouth. Fingers twitching and sliding out. Dragging themselves forward against my teeth. Against my gums. My jaw stretches wider. I feel tearing. I taste blood. The crunching gets louder. Then the thing inside me makes a sound. Low. Rough. Drawn out. I noticed her first time in the morning. I was in my kitchen with a mug of coffee, killing time before my first class, looking out the window the way I usually do. One of the windows across the street was open. She stood there, wearing a red cardigan and a black beret. We locked eyes. Lasted probably a second, maybe less. Just long enough to be familiar. She smiled and gave a small wave. I waved back. Then she stepped away from the window. I finished my coffee and left. I saw her again later that day. I was at the grocery store, halfway down the aisle, when I noticed the red cardigan a few steps ahead of me. She was comparing two boxes, holding one in each hand. She looked over her shoulder and smiled when she saw me. I nodded and that was it. At the library, she was sitting at a table near the windows. Same clothes, same calm look. When I packed my things, she glanced up from her book and gave a short wave. I just waved back without thinking. I had a doctor's appointment that evening. I sat down in the waiting room, checked my phone, looked up, and she was there again, sitting across from me, feeling out of form. She smiled. I smiled back awkwardly. I told myself it was just coincidence. We were in the same neighborhood. These things happen. That night, I looked out of my window again. She was back in the building across the street. Not the same window as before. She was a few floors down, standing near the corner of a different room. She smiled and waved. I hesitated but waved back. The next night she was higher up. Different window, same building. She waved and I didn't. She held the wave a second longer than before, then dropped her hand. I tried not to look out the window. Every night that I did, she appeared in a different one. Sometimes on higher floor, sometimes lower. Other times closer to the center of the building. Sometimes at the far end. Every time I looked, she was always somewhere else. During the day, I kept seeing her too. At bus stops, outside a cafe near campus, once across the street when I came out of a building. She never approached me. We never spoke. She just smiles whenever our eyes meet. I stopped waving back altogether. And she didn't seem bothered by that. One night, I noticed someone else in one of the windows across the street. A man stood there, talking on his phone. He laughed at something, turned away and pulled the curtains. The next night, that window stayed dark. She was standing 2 floors above it, still waving. I started closing my blinds before it got dark. That helped a little. At least I didn't have to see which window she was in. A few days later, I passed the building across the street on my way to class. I slowed down and looked up. I didn't see her. I felt relieved. I left the blinds closed as usual. I was about to go to sleep when I noticed a shadow on my window. Tall enough to be a person. Just there. Something tapped the glass. Light and careful. I didn't move. The tapping came again. A little louder this time. I stepped further back. The next sound wasn't tapping. It was a bang. The blinds shook. Another bang. Then another. The shadow wasn't moving. It didn't stop.